Middle French is a historical division of the French language that covers the period from 1340 to 1611. It is a period of transition during which the French language becomes clearly distinguished from the other competing Oil languages, which are sometimes subsumed within the concept of Old French. The French language is imposed as the official language of the Kingdom of France in place of Latin and other Oil and Occitan languages. The literary development of French prepares the vocabulary and grammar for the classical French spoken in the 17th and 18th centuries. History. The most important change found in Middle French is the complete disappearance of the noun declension system. There is no longer a distinction between nominative and oblique forms of nouns, and plurals are indicated simply with an s. This transformation necessitates an increased reliance on the order of words in the sentence, which becomes more or less the syntax of modern French. Among the elites, Latin was still the language of education, administration, and bureaucracy. This changed in 1539, with the Ordinance of Villers-Cotterêts, in which François I made French alone the language for legal and juridical acts. Regional differences were still extremely pronounced throughout France. In the south of France, Occitan languages dominated. In east-central France, Franco-Provençal languages were predominant, while, in the north of France, Oil languages other than Francian continued to be spoken. The administrative language imposed in 1539 is generally thought by modern linguists to represent a generalized langue d'oil shorn of distinctive, dialectal features, rather than the triumph of one dialect over the others. The fascination with classical texts led to numerous borrowings from Latin and Greek, sometimes to the detriment of the rich Old French vocabulary. Numerous neologisms based on Latin roots were introduced, and some scholars modified the speaking of French words to bring them into conformity with their Latin roots, sometimes erroneously. This often produced a radical difference between a word's speaking and the way it was pronounced. The French wars in Italy and the presence of Italians in the French court brought the French into contact with Italian humanism. Many words dealing with military and artistic practices were borrowed from Italian. These tendencies would continue through classical French. There were also some borrowings from Spanish and German and from the Americas. The influence of the Anglo-Norman language on English had left words of Norman origin in England. Some words of Romance origin now found their way back into French as doublets through war and trading contacts. Also, the meaning and usage of many words from Old French were transformed. Spelling and punctuation in this period are extremely erratic. The introduction of printing in 1470 highlighted the need for reform in spelling. One proposed reform came from Jacques Pelletier du Mans, who developed a phonetic speaking system and introduced new typographic signs, but this spelling reform was not followed. This period saw the publication of the first French grammars and of the French-Latin dictionary of Robert Estienne. At the beginning of the 17th century, French would see the continued unification of French, the suppression of certain forms, and the prescription of rules, leading to classical French literature. Middle French is the language found in the writings of François Villon, Clement Marot, Rabelais, Montaigne, Ronsard, and the poets of the Pléiade. The affirmation and glorification of French finds its greatest manifestation in the defense and illustration of the French language by the poet Joachim du Bellay, which maintained that French was a worthy language for literary expression and which promulgated a program of linguistic production and purification.